and welcome to a Life After Divorce podcast. And I'm your host, Patricia Lavigne. I'm a separation and divorce coach. I'm so happy that you're here to join us. And I decided to do a 10 series discussion with 10 people asking 10 questions regarding their experience of divorce. I feel it's important for new people who are going through a divorce to have that some hope and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm very excited to invite Len as our guest today. So welcome, Len.
Well, thank you, Patricia, for inviting me to your podcast. I hope I can give some good information.
Yeah, I think, everyone has a value of information to offer because we all go through a different scenarios of divorces, but I think everybody has an experience to share and to let other people know that, there is some benefits of moving forward after the divorce. So I guess the first question I wanted to ask you was, how long has it been since you divorced?
It's about 6 months now, but it took about 2.5 years getting here.
So you're a rookie at this.
Actually, this April, it's 3 years.
There you go.
It took 2.5 years to get to the starting gate of the divorce, or the finish line, I guess.
How was your marriage during that time?
Well, I'd have to, during the separation time or the marriage pre-divorce or pre-separation.
Well, how long were you married?
35 years.
35 years. So you stuck through it all that time.
Yeah, I stuck it out.
Yeah.
You do things like that for family, I think. And in my case, anyhow, always the stigma of, my parents never divorced, things like that. So there's always this burden of, oh, well, you just live with what you got kind of thing, even though we grew apart.
Right. Yeah, I think our generation felt that. That was our generation out there, that marriage was taboo. I'm divorced, I mean.
Yeah. Now I think the other way.
Yeah. I get it. I really get that. So looking back at what you have done differently, what would you have done?
Well, I might have started the process sooner. I might have realized at the end of it all that it hasn't been as bad as I imagined it to be, the whole process. And therefore, had I just had the intuitiveness to start it when the marriage went south, so to speak. We had grown apart. We hadn't had a relationship for many, many, many years. And it was kind of suffocating to stay in that relationship. But I did it. I did it for kids. I did it for appearances, all kinds of things. So differently, I guess I might have tried to start the process sooner, knowing what I know now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way. And I think they've come to realize staying in a marriage that long. And, I had brought this up before, where the process of marriage is, you fall in love, you get married, and you go through the process of responsibilities, and then you have your children, and then you have your marriage, and you sort of drift apart, and you just sort of don't realize that you're kind of lost it, right? During that relationship sort of loses, the communication loses, you just disengage from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. We were sort of living our own lives, but we were married and we were raising children, and we had financial responsibilities that we shared. It just seemed like a huge, huge mountain to climb to even start or think about the process. So you just sort of stick it out. Mm-hmm. And yet I wasn't living my life the way I wanted to live my life, or enjoying my life.
Do you think you should have reached out for help or additional support, like right after your, divorce, or during maybe the time that you thought, oh, I've got to leave?
Yes. I went through the legal process with lawyers. Mm-hmm. We both hired up and had, lawyers that dealt with things for about 2.5 years, and they just like to pad their pockets. Mm-hmm. I think that had I had perhaps a mediator or something of that nature rather than the legal team, it seems like in the beginning we came up with an offer. I did anyhow. And in the end, that offer would basically what the lawyers negotiated. So, and it took 2.5 years to get there. And both of us were saying to the lawyers is, we just want this over with. We just want to get on with our lives, kind of thing. But somehow they managed to stall it, or, look out for our legal interests on both sides. And perhaps, and I've heard people that have gotten mediators involved have done the process quicker with less expense. I also had support of friends, and I guess seeing today in this day and age, I have 2 friends that are both divorced, 2 male friends of mine, And I mean, they were supportive, or they were guides, I guess, maybe not the correct guides at sometimes, but they would tell me certain things like, don't fight over this, don't do that, you're just wasting your time. So it's good to have support.
Do you think being a person like myself, having a coach available to give them some guidance and offer some emotional support, do you think that's helpful?
Yes, I do. I think that many people will face a divorce in a different way than I did. I was the one that initiated the divorce or the separation and divorce. And I'm sure, and I did have my friends, as I say, but they were supportive as friends who also knew my spouse, my ex-spouse, but they're partial. They're not impartial. They can, they're judgmental, I guess, in some ways, and want to be supportive of me. And I think that sometimes that can be detrimental. It would be better to have an unbiased, neutral person who understands what you're going through and helps you and guides you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've had some clients where they keep telling me that they go talk to their friends or they talk to their relatives, and their first thought is like, from relatives is like, just leave, just don't worry about it, just leave. And it's not always that easy. There's an emotional process that you've got to take, and there's some closure, and there's some steps that really help you to move forward. It's not just closing the door and walking away or picking up your stuff and taking what's yours. There's an emotional attachment to things too.
Yeah. There's family, there's children,
Yeah.
they're involved, and it's everybody's going to have an emotional, burden in some respects.
Mm-hmm. And that's, you just said it too. It's everybody. You're not just divorcing your partner. You're divorcing everybody's involved. There's family, there's kids, there's, friends, there's everybody. And people don't realize that. And then once they start leaving, they think that they're just leaving that one person, but come to realize that, wow, everybody else is affected too.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about in-laws and nephews and, brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws and things like that. And how are they going to react to the whole thing? And you expect that, blood is thicker than water. So you're the one that's left out on the street, so to speak. So it was kind of healthy and interesting for me the way mine did turn out. I did have family behind me, and it was the in-laws family, sort of, in some respects. They all expected it. And it was a very, it was tough, but it was mutual. And in the end, everybody came out with a fair share and moved on with their lives. So, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of people involved.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I like doing as a coach is I like to encourage people to build those relationships, even if they have left. We're all adults and we're mature about it. We can actually sort of build that business relationship in some cases. And some cases you can still stay with your family. It doesn't always have to fall apart, right? I mean,
No,
it's not like that for everybody, but some people can be fortunate enough to keep those relationships.
yeah, I think I've been one of them. I don't have the relationship that I had with my spouse.
Mm-hmm.
That's just would be impossible to maintain it. It's not that there's any animosity or anything there. It's just that we've both gone separate ways after 35 years of being together. You would think, and I know some relationships, people do stay together and that friendship sort of association. But I guess maybe in my situation, it's only been 6 months, and that friendship is, I have respect for her being the mother of my children, but I really am not going out of my way to go cut the grass or shovel the snow.
It's funny you say that because I actually encourage that as you've got to make that decision and make that break. Because if you don't, it would and could impact the next relationship you have, right?
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
I mean, I totally agree. There should be respect there though. And there should be that sort of level of friendship because yes, they are your ex-partner and they are the parent role, but yeah, there is a certain way with certain time when you have to have that break, right? You have to
Yeah. And I think that, you think of the future of your children, weddings, christenings, birth. Well, we're both involved in that. We're going to meet on those occasions,
Mhm.
and it's got to be healthy and respectful. So that's where it lies right now.
Absolutely. And I think that's the most mature thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So did your children get affected or have any reaction to the divorce?
Well, it's interesting. When I think of my children, they're both adults. When this all started, I guess they were maybe 25 and 27, and now it's turning 30 this summer and 28, I guess. they witnessed the relationship that I had with my spouse for many years, and as, teenagers and adults. And my son is very aware, and for them, it was a relief perhaps, because my relationship with my children was not as strong while I stayed in the relationship I was in with my spouse. But since I have separated and divorced, my relationship with my daughter particularly has improved 110%. Whereas my son and I have always gotten along to the point where he questioned my staying in a relationship when he was younger, like when he was maybe 25 or 24, questioned like what I was doing. So they knew it. I guess I also saw that my daughter, and I didn't know this, her husband, his family had just gone through a separation and divorce. So for her, she'd already witnessed it from his perspective, and was very easygoing. And I know it's not going to be that way with every family and children, And as far as, when I talk about the children and my spouse, I never discussed with my children anything negative or positive or anything about the relationship or the spouse or why we were, other than just to understand we're getting divorced because we grew apart.
Mhm.
And that was basically it. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think the kids have to be involved when the adults' decisions and with their, the parents' decisions are. I think the children should be, taken away from that and not be involved at all. And I think that's builds the relationship afterwards and keeps it growing, is to know that they don't have to be in the middle of the parents' disputes, right?
Yeah, I agree. There shouldn't be a tug of war over the children, like your mother did this or your father did that. So I think we were both pretty good that way. And that's why I talk about respect. The respect my ex, but we had to separate, get divorced, and get on with our lives.
Yeah, and I totally encourage that when I, coach clients, is to definitely keep that respect and keep that business relationships. So what was the biggest challenge you came across after the divorce? Like for you, was it emotionally, financially, physically? Is there anything that you could sort of, tell us about the experience that you had that was the biggest challenge?
I mean, for us, when you've been together for as long as we were, there were assets that had to be equitably divided, selling a home, selling, other personal items of value, and then getting that to close and getting your hand out of your money. I mean, that was a challenge throughout the process just to get it done. When I look at what the financial burden was to pay the lawyers, and then the financial outcome was no different than where I started on day one. So I guess I could say that was frustrating, but I don't think I had any big challenges. I was fortunate to be able to buy myself my own house, to not have to worry about renting. My spouse stayed in the matrimonial home until it was divvied up. So I don't know. I guess COVID's been a good challenge during this year of divorce, because it's not like get out there and do too much. But no, I can't really strongly say that there were challenges other than just working through the financial division of property and just getting on with our lives after that. And that just took forever.
Was it very stressful during waiting that 2.5 years to get it through?
Yeah, it was frustrating at times. Not knowing, why did we stall on this one? Why didn't that just get pushed through? That kind of thing. A lot of paperwork, that was legal stuff that the lawyers had to actually do, but dividing the assets and, assessing what was out there, they left a lot of that up to us to, decide, do you want to appraise this or, whatever. And certain assets I would have liked to just kept, but there were challenges as to value. So they were sold, because whatever the highest price was going to be is what they were going to be worth. That's just the way it kind of turned out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So I asked you earlier about how long it took for you to finalize your divorce. You said about 2.5 years, but what about when you were married? How early in the marriage or later in the marriage that you've kind of realized, okay, this isn't working and it's time for me to go?
So,
Was it
uh,
20 years, 30, like, was it 20 years, 10 years?
yeah, well, it probably went in stages where you realize that things weren't quite as we married on a 5-year plan. We're going to have children. We didn't have children until 14 years into the marriage. And then the children are young, and you're raising the kids. And I find that at that time, it's probably a cliche that I was neglected. My spouse became the mother of my children. And, I was the breadwinner, go out and work, and come home, and the kids were too young and to realize. And I mean, I could honestly say that the last 10 years of my marriage were suffocating.
Wow.
And I really, I just didn't have the strength to get out of that relationship earlier. And then my kids by then were already grown. I mean, they were in university at the time, and it would have been, they were adults. It would have been not easy to do, but should have been done at that time. I don't think I should have dragged it on for another, 10 years. But I did for multitude of reasons, and having nobody to really talk about that process, and not really knowing persons that were divorced at the time to talk to. So yeah, I dragged it on for another 10 years.
So what advice would you offer to people who are going through a divorce? Like, if you could actually pin down something that you really want to share with someone to give them advice, what would that be?
Well, I would really suggest that they've got to talk to somebody, get some help. If it's just emotional help to feel their way through the kind of the woods of what, you can see the forest, you can't pick out the trees kind of thing. You need somebody who's impartial to be able to say, there is life after, you can survive this. Is it what you want? Like, you got to figure that out. Absolutely. That if a divorce is what is what's going to, be the end result of your relationship, then yes, I think you need some support, whether it's counseling or somebody like yourself, to just talk them through it. If you hear their feelings, feel them out, let them say the words so that they can then think about what they've said. You become the mirror, I guess, and throw it back at them to say, well, what do you feel about that, or something? I mean, I was fortunate, not fortunate, unfortunate. I have 2 friends that I've known since high school, and each of them within the 5 years before I got divorced, or 5 years before I got separated, had gone through divorce. And seeing them was kind of like my help, but it was what helped break it down in the last 10 years. I realized, wow, there is life after marriage. There is life after that relationship. You can, rebuild your life or start over or whatever. And they were my guidance. And if I hadn't had them, in a sense, to just see in the mirror what they were going through and how it transitioned, I would have been pretty alone. And so I would have wanted somebody who's, professional, understanding, to speak with.
Yeah. Yeah, I do understand that. And it's funny because I have my clients, they'll reach out and they'll say, oh, geez, thank you for your help. And thank you for giving me this guidance and keeping them aligned. And I get that from my clients. So I know what that means when somebody's out there and they don't have the direction, or they're lost. And it's not always, you were very fortunate to have your friends to support you, but not everybody has the same support, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So how long after your divorce did it take you really to get your life sort of all together and get your house? And was it sort of a good flow, or did it take you a bit of challenges to figure out, okay, where do I want to live, or where do I want to be, or what is it that's a good thing for me in my life right now? And did you discover who you were? Who was Len? Who's Len? Who am I, so to speak?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that, you see, in my case, I bought a house within 3 months of separation. Now, it wasn't where I wanted to necessarily live or what was going to be my forever future home. It was what I could afford until I knew what my assets were going to be, like how much I'm going to have month to month to be able to support myself. And for me to get my life back on track, I mean, I've been divorced since, I guess, September. So it's about 6 months or more, maybe 8 months now. But is my life back on track? Yeah, in some ways it is. In other ways, I'm still exploring whether I'm going to stay in this house. Do I want to continue to live where I live? But I've branched out. I've started enjoying my hobbies and recreational activities and things like that. I mean, I'm fortunate I'm retired, but I would say that it takes a while to get your life back in order completely before you can really see what you want to do tomorrow, in a sense, and I mean tomorrow in the process of for future relationship or something like that. You don't want to jump from, one wagon to another, so to speak.
Yeah, or too fast, right? And
Yeah,
then,
exactly. That's what I mean. I mean, you don't, I've got to figure out myself. I mean, who is Len? Or yeah, Len is a guy who's happy right now, enjoying day to day as best they can, staying healthy, and exploring opportunities to, have fun, or to how I'm going to spend the rest of my life.
Mhm.
That I don't know yet. I mean, I think when I got married thinking this is how the rest of your life's going to be, too quickly. Now I'm slowing it down and thinking I've learned from that relationship to slow it down and give myself some time to breathe.
And maybe sort of do things that you never got to do during that marriage, and sort of like, because you've given up so much when you have kids and stuff like that, that you didn't give yourself some time to just say, hey, I want to do this for me,
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, I think retirement was a biggie too, because I was married to my work more than I was married to my spouse, and and getting free of all of that just it's changed things dramatically for me, to the better, much, much better.
Yeah. There's also another thing you brought up about the finances, and that's another thing I find that it's something that people really got to pay attention to. I think they jump out of the marriage and they don't pay attention to, it's now one income, it's not two, and
Yes.
they forget that, and they forget that they have to either live within their means and not still live with two paychecks.
Right.
And I think that's a bit of a shock for people too, is when the financial part comes in. So that's another thing that I like talking about people with, is just, teaching them a different way and a different approach of looking at finances. I think that's
Yeah.
sort
They
of,
always say two can live cheaper than one.
yeah,
All of a sudden it's one.
yeah.
But sometimes when your kids are growing up too, I mean, there's no child support or anything like that. And,
Okay.
you're not paying for all those extra goodies. I mean, I do find now that I have a disposable income for enjoyment,
Mhm.
which when I stayed in a relationship and we were, into the estate home and the big ego, and I think I got over all of that.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's also good to tell it, like, let people know that too. So if there was a one thing that you could have done differently, what would that be? And whether it's your marriage, whether it's your life, whatever, what would that one thing be that would you have can give someone some advice on, as what you would do differently?
But we could start over with 10 things, but
Oh, okay.
the one thing that I would have done was recognized earlier that the relationship either needed fixing or I should get out of it. And I didn't fix it, and I didn't get out of it right away. So,
Well, that's interesting. You say fixing.
timing.
What do you think needed fixing? What part of the relationship, looking back, what part of that relationship that kind of you thought felt apart?
Well, lack of attention, feeling neglected, children took priority. There were no date nights. There was work. Things like that. So there's room to fix things, obviously, but we went way beyond that. And it has to be worth fixing, I guess, too. Your interests have to have stayed similar, or at least your hobbies or your interests are not impeded by the other person's because of financial restrictions when you're two deciding how you're going to spend your money, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So I guess for our last question, is there anything more that you would like to tell us about your experience, or just sort of wrapping it up with, anything that you think that you could just offer?
Well, I'd like to say that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Mhm.
It just depends how long that tunnel is.
Yeah,
You can
yes.
shorten it. You can shorten the tunnel.
Yeah.
I don't think my experience is unique necessarily. I mean, everybody's different. There might be young children involved, maybe multiple reasons for growing apart or staying together. Your kids, your finances, the stigma of divorce. I think that in the end, there is light at the end of the tunnel. People have to believe that, it may seem hopeless. It may seem like I haven't figured out how I'm going to do my finances and things like that. Then I did have 2.5 years of wondering like, gee, what am I going to have left at the end of this? Will I be able to live a lifestyle that I'm happy with or content with? And you know what? It's happiness is more important than money or what people think of you. Happiness is about your inner peace and just letting the sunshine on your face and smiling and realizing that there are better days or you're having a better day. So
Mhm.
I just say to people that, yeah, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Try and sort of analyze everything piece by piece to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And like you say, don't just grab a bag and run out the door.
Mhm.
You need a pretty big bag to take everything with you because you need all the accounting, you need to know everything financially. And some spouses have no clue of the finances. Other ones look after it. Some people have separate accounts, things like that, but they're definitely shared things. And I just think that, I mean, there's light. There's definitely light. I'm happy. I couldn't be happier. I
Mhm.
got born again, I think, in some respects.
Mhm. Well, that's good information and it's good advice to give people. I also think that the other thing too is they really have to stay focused and they have to really pay attention to what the decisions are for their future. And I think that's why I like being a coach, because I help people do that and I help them keep sort of clear on their decisions and aligned from their future and, what's important in the best interest for everybody, not just for the one person, but everybody, the kids included, the ex-spouse, and it has to be made for everybody, not just one person, right?
Absolutely. And I think as a caveat to everything, you have to be able to control your discussions with your spouse or ex-spouse or whatever it's going to be, because you can't be accusatory. You can't be blaming. That just puts people's backs up and that's just going to bog things down huge. And it'll be bitter. And that's when the lawyers take over.
I hear
So,
you. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you again, Len, for participating. And I would definitely like to have other people join us for our next podcast, because I really feel it's important to learn about everybody's experience and what they dealt through and what they're going through as a divorce. So, and of course, remember, there is a life after divorce. And again, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you, Patricia, for having me.